Hi, friends. Welcome to A Heart's Way podcast, episode 2. I'm so excited to be here. You guys are so very welcome here in this space. And I'm so blessed to be sharing my journey with you guys. And I do hope to share your journeys as well and have tough conversations here in regards to truths, deeper truths that might be challenging to hear for the first time or to even know what the truth is and to challenge some beliefs that are maybe really programmed in our subconscious mind that I do intend on finding the truth with you guys is essentially what my whole purpose of this is. And now we can never really fully see an objective truth of God because we are always sort of coming from this finite mind of perception with all of our experiences and all of our um, filter of everything that we have absorbed is distorting whatever that truth is. So we have to kind of keep that in mind as we navigate through truth. So one thing that was coming to me very loud was in regards to when you're no longer sort of proving a truth or under an assumption that you're living a truth, but you're seeking the truth, you know, that you are unraveling layers and layers of programming. And so if you're still in a process of seeking truth, then you know that there's an unraveling happening. Okay. Now, if you're in a state of proving a truth or feeling like you're living a truth, then you most likely are still in the false self or the egoic self. And so I'm going to quote scripture here, although this is nothing to do with religious beliefs at all. Okay, but in my awakening, the teachings of Jesus really resonated with me, and specifically when Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. And so this is Matthew 16:24, when Jesus is talking about what it means to die onto self, and that is the false self. That is the beliefs, the truth, our perceived truth, the relative truth that we hang on to. And so this is years of schooling, this is years of conditioning, this is our upbringing, this is societal beliefs, this is 26,000 years of um, ancestral, genetical, built upon structures that are being undone, okay, as we enter this new phase. And you always hear me talk about you must descend before you ascend, you know, and this is really the unraveling or the unbinding of all these beliefs that we might hold. And so I go on about ego because there is a misconception even in the spiritual community about what an ego is. And you know, if you even mention ego to someone who is religious, it turns into this new age woo woo versus this religious belief, and it is so far from the truth. Um, Ego essentially has many different words that are used to describe the ego. Okay, and so when you are seeing things from a higher state of consciousness, you can then see through the false self, which is the egoic self, very clearly, the root of all suffering, okay, which we could call the devil. We could call it the programming of the subconscious mind that takes action. We can see the ego as an identity that's been created, and all it really is this mind activity. Okay, so it's not an entity unto itself, it's not something that infiltrated like a demon or a devil that's like infiltrating you, although it is a series of thought programs that create a deep rooted belief that is generating 97% of your words, actions, and your daily choices towards what it is that you're involving yourself with. So if you do not question who you are and what that is and what your identity is built on, you are proving some form of truth. Okay, so if you're at that stage, then welcome to this podcast, because I do feel like this might challenge some of those beliefs. If you're in the process of descending, meaning unraveling the parts of self that have been deeply wound in your belief system, we will challenge a lot of that and what that looks like. And I'm not claiming to have great truths or anything, okay? Although when we are at a state where we are in a place of no self for long enough, I do feel like there's an integration back to this 3D, and it is very specific to each and every single one of us. And so one might call this unique self the egoic self, right? Because we hear no self, like that doesn't sound like fun, okay? And so the no self is anatta. It's the Buddhist doctrine that says, it states that there is no permanent, unchanging self, okay? There is no permanent, unchanging self. And so the only thing that exists is a manifestation of a forever changing form, okay, into manifest, out of manifest. So these could be reincarnations, okay, so reincarnations coming in and out of existence in the 3D world. But the eternal self, okay, the eternal self, the spirit, that is no end and no beginning, okay, and so that is permanent, and that is the unchanging, and it doesn't have any of these added on doctrines and beliefs and conditions and programs. And so this is the unbinding of all of those thought systems. Now, why do we want to do this? Okay, it's not to become a no self. Like I said, that sounds very boring. You know, it also sounds very much like this period of void. And the void period could take us into a state of depression, loneliness, isolation, no purpose, unmotivated, a whole series of stuff. And I don't know how long, you know, the void is supposed to take, or how long it's taken for each individual, but I do believe that the state of a no self must be achieved in the process of the awakening. And so some of you guys might be in that void, the no self space, you know, and some of you guys might be at a state where now you're uncovering your unique expression through the creator. That's very much like a fingerprint of God through you, okay, and is expressed through your desire, but not the egoic desire that's trying to attain and attach to outcome, but more of a desire to fulfill some sort of expression. You know, it's your calling, it's your purpose, it's the word of God that's acting through you, it's your devotion to the one source creator. Now I use God, creator, divine source, spirit sort of interchangeably, okay, higher state of consciousness, the one source of consciousness, which would be the ultimate highest truth, okay, sort of interchangeably. But as we go through our process, it looks very different for a lot of us, but there are common threads of what sort of must be processed in order to enter the next phase. Okay, and so when we're heavy in ego, illusion, distortion, subconscious patterns and beliefs, there is no conscious choice to make different decisions. There is just firing on all cylinders, this version of self that's been beat into us, you know, and in order to sort of come to the point of the desire to seek a greater truth beyond that, it's usually presented in way of a loss, you know, and I talked about that in the first episode for me, what the loss is. Now this could be death for you, like losing someone you loved, you know, this could be being separated from someone you love. This could be an illness. This could be a near death experience of yourself. This could be just a deep experience, profound experience where you're confronted with asking yourself something deeper than that in which you experienced. And once you're sort of set on that path, there is no unseeing that there is something more meaningful than the material actions that you might have been involved with. And so we could just become very unfulfilled. We might have it all. We might have it all in the 3D sort of world, and then understand that it really is pointless or meaningless, or that there's still this pursuit that's on, and there's still this feeling of incompleteness within us that is still seeking some form of fulfillment, which is us seeking our true nature. And our true nature is that of love. And so this is why, regardless of what it is that we're seeking out there, it is truly, if you follow it back, it is to experience love. Okay, and so once we realize that our true nature is love, and really inner feel and understand this, the seeking sort of ceases to exist. And that is in which we generate a complete different sort of vibration to the universe, and everything sort of seems to align. It is presented in front of us, and so there is no doing in way of seeking, searching, attaching, and it is a state of resting in one's being, resting in our true nature of love, and then watching as the divine creator is putting in front of us all of the different manifestations that we are consciously able to involve ourselves with. And so this is sort of the flow of an awakening, if you will, or to explore your divine nature, because we are always feeling like something is amiss or is not whole until we finally connect to what it is that is truthful within our nature. And so this is why we seek, this is why we desire to have love, to have other, to fulfill something within us, because it is our true nature to be whole, to be fulfilled, to be in a state of just being and being completely at rest. And so through many, 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 many millennia of this conditioning, that what it is that you need is something external from self, has been something that we just believe without question, that, oh, my happiness is out there, it is separate from myself. It is finding that relationship, it is getting that job, it is becoming successful, it is all of these things that we're told that it is, and without question we're sort of set on that journey, because we're told, well, it's either that or you're just, you're not making something of yourself, or you're lacking something that you're supposed to attain, and when you can't attain it, you feel like you are less than. And if you do attain it, you realize that you can never really attain it, in which the essence behind that form is what you are really seeking. And so either experience is going to result to the same uncovering, and this is why many different paths, many different journeys will lead you to the same sort of understanding, spiritual truths that are great, capital T truths that cannot be undone. And the A Course in Miracles really talks about that, in which is true. It cannot be threatened, because the truth is standing on its own. There is nothing that can threaten truth. Truth is truth. Okay, and an untruth is something that needs support of something else in order to maintain an illusion, in order to maintain its sort of structure. It needs other systems to support it. And so those untruths will fall away, and what will remain is only the truth, when you can see through the illusions of what's not real. Okay, and when I say not real, what's not eternal, what has no beginning and no end, and it's everlasting. Okay, now if something is ever changing, I'm considering this as an illusion. Okay, because it's ever changing, and there is no fixed sort of form that lasts forever. And so when we are on both sides of that experience, like I said, we attain the home or the family, or become, you know, the president, the richest person on earth, or whatever that our egoic desires seek to attain, and we achieve this, and we might go on that for a while. You know, it's like upgrading our job, or upgrading our relationship, or upgrading our home, or upgrading our car, or upgrading our way of life, and upgrading, and it's like a constant upgrade where there is no end in sight, and the ego is constantly seeking and attaching to a better version, or a more desirable version, you know, and it soon realizes that there is no end in sight in that path. And so to die unto self is to unbind those attachments, and to relinquish those identities that have created that attachment to that story and that belief that I am a face or an identity of that in which I've accomplished, that in which I've um, shown of myself, is tied to me in any sort of way, which is so far from the truth. Okay. And so the ego likes to take that sort of win, if you will. I created this, I achieved this, I was the doer of this thing. Meanwhile, the self, the form self, the finite self is that but a wave in a great ocean. Okay, and so the wave itself has no ability to do anything outside of the ocean, because everything is so interconnected. And so who is the ego to say anything without, you know, like the sun, without the sun there'd be no life force, there would be no way of this little ego existing, you know. And everything is dependent upon one another, and everything must sort of coexist in a way that allows there to be divine flow. And so the ego wants to be separate in order to claim the victory as its own doing, and then when there's a falling, which is now the opposite end that I talked about, who I can't achieve this thing, I didn't become the successful person I wanted, I wasn't able to finish school or do this career, or I don't have the looks, I don't have the intelligence, I didn't write a book, I'm just a normal being, or I'm like, I feel like I'm in the lower class, or some sort of disability, some sort of inability to be at our full extension. We might see this as well from the egoic perspective. And this is why ego is not about this arrogant boasting, but also this victimization of self, where there's shame and there's a story that we believe that we are the disappointments, and that we are less than that of another, because the comparison. And so there's that separation still there. So the root of that suffering is the belief that there is separation, and that the ego, it now leaves the individual with that sort of understanding. You know, the ego is not going to take responsibility, but more so say, see, you're a failure, or you can't do anything right, or there is something that you did or that you're carrying, you know, that the ego is sort of washing its hands of and leaving you with, and you're carrying this burden. And so either which way, this ego is, like I said, either claiming victory or doing blaming. And there's only these two sort of worlds that this ego knows. And so we cannot rid ourselves, okay, of this ego, but we could see through the illusion and the voice in which it's trying to narrate to us who it thinks that we are. And that's the identity that we create, and we are not those identities. Okay, and so if it's really deep rooted in a belief, undoing that could take a very, very long time. And you could go through therapy, you could go through each experience, you know, oh, I failed at high school, or oh, I didn't go to law school like my parents wanted, or oh, I never married or had a child, or oh, whatever the story is, and undo them one by one. And like I said, sit through therapy and find peace in that, and go to the next thing, and be in this sort of what I call perpetual sort of shadow work. Okay, and so yes, shadow work's very important. Therapy, there's definitely a place and time for that. There's definitely uncovering certain things about experiences of the past that you might feel like you want to review. But at the end of the day, there is sort of one root. And when you can get to this one root, which is the belief that I am separate, the belief that I am that identity, that's a doer, that separate being that's created this thing, this thing that I'm still carrying, or this belief that I'm the doer and I achieved, or I'm without that, then my being is sort of impacted by the reflection of what I've been able to achieve or attain or present myself as. And so to get to that root and really undo that root, and so we might hear it, as a spiritual concept, you hear, we are all one, there is no separation, unity consciousness, and all these terms are sort of synonymous with us connecting back to the divine source, the one state of consciousness, which is the highest form coming from source. And it's extending out to different forms here in the 3D, manifesting as different individuals, okay, different animal forms. And it's like when we can truly understand that we are a part of that eternal source, that we are not form, okay, and so to sit with that idea and to become okay with that sort of feeling, we sort of start to see the illusion of everything that has transpired. And so it might not be a one and done. You might have sparks of revelation there, but it's really sitting with that spiritual truth that's very real, and the ego will try to get in there and say, but this and but that, and will really try to skew how we get there, because the ego does not want to let go of the story. It wants to remain. Okay, the ego senses that once it's no longer has its strength, its narration can no longer control you, can no longer sort of dictate that, it's losing its power. You're losing interest, like your eternal self is losing interest in that story. And so it takes away from its sort of fuel, it takes away from its energy that you've been infusing. And so the ego cannot act without you infusing thought, energy into that ego, feeding that story over and over, so you're really feeding that ego. And when you create space between you and that story and you don't feed it, that ego sort of drowns out. Okay, it sort of starves itself, and the story isn't as loud in the mind, and it just becomes like a thought, like, just a thing that's happening, that's coming. It's a thought, but you're not feeding it. It's not driving your belief system anymore, like, oh yes, I am a failure, yes, I could have done that, or yes, what did I'm so stupid, I should have did this, or I should have done that, or whatever the mind story is. It is no longer one and the same. The thought comes, the feeling comes right after it, and it is really felt as the identity, the true identity, but it is not the true identity. And so this is where I think there's the biggest challenge so far, I feel, in this awakening, is like when someone says, just be yourself, be your true self, be your authentic self. It's like, I am my authentic self. I made a video on this because I truly felt very authentic. I felt very truly like myself. I felt it offensive, if someone would tell me I wasn't authentic or truly me, because I felt like all my action was being truthful. I felt like all my decisions were ones I was making, but yes, I was making it though from the basis of all of those belief systems and structures and conditions and programs that were so integrated, and I chose through and picked through, this is right, this is wrong, this is morally acceptable, this isn't, and I'm going to do this way because this is how it's right, and this is how it's not right, and so I must be okay because I'm checking these boxes, I'm doing it right by society, or I'm successful in the eyes of society, and I have these material things and everything seems to flow. So this must be right, this must be truth, and all of that stuff begs to question, because the baseline of the great truth is actually neutral. There is no right, there is no wrong, and there is no eternal self that's sort of pending on the validity of what it attains or what it sort of has in the material world. It has no bearing on that at all. And so seeing through that is a process, like I said, and I don't know how long it takes, and it is a very, very painful process, of detaching from the identity that we were never really, and accepting that. And then you're sort of left in this void, no space, if you want to call it this. Well, then who am I? And that's really when the process of ascension sort of happens. And there's very many different revelations that come online, and this could be learned on sort of more of a even a linear fashion, as well as like a vertical sort of plane through the dimensions. And I know this sounds very woo woo if you're not quite here, but those revelations of spiritual truths that come in, they're just sort of coming as you need them. Okay, they just come in as you need them. And when you let go of the egoic self and the false self, or the all of that, you create space within your energy field that allows there to be new sort of realizations coming in that are actually closer to God's truth, source truth. And they come in perfect timing to you. Certain realizations that maybe you couldn't have at another point in time, because the state of consciousness was so narrow and was so attached to too many attachments and material things and stories and ways of being and this sort of thing. And so there was no space for the great truth to come through. And all of these great truths that come through, like I said, could be even in a linear fashion. They could just be seeing certain things where maybe we were very narrow in the past through many different sort of lenses, and holding different perceptions of that same concept in these different ways. But also with the ascension process, I feel like this would be one in which we're strengthening or braiding our DNA, if you will, or eternal self, with this light consciousness that becomes stronger and stronger and wider over time. And it is just channeled through this divine creator through you, so you can be the divine creator experiencing itself through whatever it is that you do, which I feel, like I say, is very unique to you. And so we need all of these authentic selves to unfold in the universe in a way, because had I not gone through this process, I mean, I'd still be doing that in which I was doing before. This channel, and there was nothing wrong with that, for sure. But there was me not aligning with the most authentic, most highest potential of my divine nature. Now, is this the highest potential of my nature? I don't think so. Okay. But this is on the path to it. And this to me feels way more aligned. Okay. Way more aligned to my soul than what it was that I was doing previous, and so there is this having to be open to what comes through, and sometimes we are on this seeking path, and there's nothing wrong with trying to, watch as many videos as you can to gain an understanding, or read books, and to conceptualize these spiritual concepts, that kind of allow us to wrap our mind around it. But that would be, the greatest pitfall of, I understand something conceptually, and so therefore I understand it, but it's not an inner experience of spiritual truth that's been integrated through an actual experience. And so it could be weaponized by your ego. And so you hear of the spiritual ego that comes through, and this spiritual ego likes to hijack what you know. It hijacks what you know, and it uses it against you, in different ways. And we see this, in the spiritual community as well. And so there is that identity, and all we've really done is just switch from the ego identity of the matrix world and shifted that and created a whole subset of new identity now in this spiritual world. And so it might have more of a it's even more challenging. It's even more difficult to see through, but it is that of the same. And so there is a seeing through all of those concepts as knowledge, but there is understanding that until they're fully understood and experienced, then they're just nothing but concepts onto themselves. And you, until you experience and learn it, then I don't think there's any real learning there. There's really no learning there. Like, yes, knowledge is great, but in that case, like I said, the knowledge is sort of used to weaponize to create this spiritual ego. And so there is I guess a collective ego too. It's like the new age could be looked as a as an identity within itself, and I would not identify with anything really, but new age specifically, and I wouldn't identify as being religious or having religion, but new age is just another religion, unto itself. And crystals and tarot cards and all of this stuff is not spirituality. It's not like, yes, it's a tool we can use to get closer to source, just as we can use the Bible, just as we can the teachings, of spiritual teachers such as Jesus and Buddha, and the ascended masters. And all of that doesn't really mean anything unless you're in the right channel of frequency to connect to a deeper truth of what's being expressed behind that knowledge that comes through. Okay. And so, this is why sometimes I do challenge myself, or feel challenged, I should say, by like doing tarot in a way where it's like, I see the truth behind that, just like I see the truth behind religion, although I don't believe that there should be any real religion that divides and creates suffering and a right or wrong, or that there is a one right way, right? Because you ask all religions and they all think their God is the right God and the other one is the not right one. And there's so many holes and fallacies in scriptures, and the scribes of the time that could be wanting power, could be wanting to infiltrate messages, could be wanting control, could be misguided, and all of the stuff that we have no way to speak about, and so we're told just to, well, I know in like Christianity and from that angle, from I guess Western philosophy, it's like, have the faith in this blind faith and do not question, do not question and have this like blind faith. And there should be nothing in this universe that you do not question, because the real answers comes from curiosity and question. you know Curiosity and question from a true heart space of love should not be threatening, because like I said in A Course in Miracles, what is true cannot be threatened. And so everyone must come to this truth. If there was this one sort of venue of God, or this one right answer of that religion, then there should be nothing to be threatened by. And that uncovery would come through that individual, and that individual would work through their one relationship or connection through the divine without needing a middleman. And so back to my thing about the tarot, it's like, you do not need a middleman. You do not need meditation. You do not need crystals. You do not need tarot. You do not need a preacher. You do not need anything except for your ability to undo what it is that's blocking your connection to the divine from being undistorted, okay? Not distorted, so that you can retain whatever it is that is being given to you in way of information. And so that information you'll receive in however it is that's going to be clear to you. And then when you sort of work backwards and see this knowledge, Jesus's teachings, or whatever it is, ascended masters that you might start to follow or look at, it's like, wow, this is truly what it is that I understand and inner experience, and it has a whole new meaning to you. And so it isn't just that text that you might have read at one point that was just sort of floating as knowledge. And so this is why I don't think that the knowledge is going to bring upon the spiritual awakening. It is the awakening and the dying onto self, or the surrender of the what is not you, and the undoing. The quickest you can undo that, the quicker you're able to tie into these spiritual truths that will be given to you through downloads, dreams, synchronicities, guides coming to you, information, and you'll see like the right video will sort of pop up, the right teacher. And this doesn't mean, oh, I don't want to hear this because it's not coming from divine source when my eyes are closed in meditation. It's like, no, those teachers, including this video, are put in front of you at the time that you're needing it. It's like divine source is putting in front of you these messages, these people, these relationships, and these experiences, and it's has a whole different meaning in your world, you know. And this is the true unfolding of divine nature, because you'll see growth and you'll see your ascension based on that growth. And you'll outgrow certain teachers, you'll outgrow certain things, and it's like right at the time that you're needing, you know, when you're unbinding the full self, you might learn a lot about that. You might learn a lot about the void, like I'd say, when you're in the state of the no self and the non-duality, and the part where you're just feeling unmotivated and unidentified and unattached, and but it's so cold and it's lonely and it's dark. And then you might start to experience this like divine love, where it's like you're so connected, you know, you're so connected, and you're devoted to the creator, and you love your neighbor as self, and you see yourself in that suffering, and you want to be of service to other, and you're like so devoted, like the air you breathe, and it's really guiding you and motivating you, and what it is that you're wanting to do day in and day out. And you know that this is a greater truth because it's inner felt. You know, it's not this thing that's sort of understood and then followed, if that makes any sense. And so all of this to talk about when you are on this sort of ascension, there are so many different things that get revealed that are specific to your journey. And we could see different people in different processes of ascension that have different knowledge. You know, it's like, wow, like I still don't, might not understand the spiritual concept, you know, or like this understanding is still sort of foreign to me, but you might have a different sort of pocket of understanding. And since the divine creator is infinite, meaning how could you possibly know all things unless you are the one, you know, source of consciousness? So you are an extension of that, but to house all of that information, which is infinite, I mean, your mind would be just completely blown, but you do have access. You have access to that library, if you will, of everything of all time, sort of like this Akashic record. This one source of all-knowing power is at your fingertips, or your third eye, or your crown chakra, open to you. But you don't need all of that for your divine purpose or path. And so this is why this seeking, because we don't know, again, this is like the wave thinking it knows, I'm going to learn about this spiritual concept and that, and a non-duality, or I'm going to go down this no self path, or I'm going to go down this sort of how to read tarot, or I'm going to go down this path of, and this is still ego, you know, this is still ego, because it's like I said, it's now just morphed into a different sort of way of trying to be something and identifying as something, and it thinks it knows, and it's seeking, and it's attaching, and it's trying to be. But there is no trying to be, there's just being. And the being is that in which it's going to show to you what you need to know, when you need to know it, how it's going to come. It just comes. And everything else that is not being shown to you or understood is fine, because it's not a part of your mission or understanding or needs to know it, although it is there for you to access if you're needing to know it. And there's like this resonance with it when you hear the truth. When you hear the truth, you know the truth. It resonates with you deeply, profoundly, you know. But in order for you to fulfill whatever it is that the divine creator is wanting you to express here and contribute to be of service to others, is very, very, very specific to you. And it will come through this version of you that you can then say, okay, this is also an identity in a way, because we're all sort of unique in a way of how it becomes expressed. But it's seeing through the ego as a driver of creating separation or creating a independent service to self identity, whereas you can sort of dance with the ego. Okay, now this doesn't mean the ego is, you can't have any part of an ego that in way of which I define the ego as, that is healthy. Okay, and so people say, well, there's this, the dark and the light, and they should be balanced within each other. It's like, no, you shouldn't carry any of the dark. Like, you should know yourself. You should uncover as much as this darkness as you can, and shine your light of awareness. And then you should be this light being that's channeling the divine creator completely, like with this light. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't have tendencies to have the ego pop up and say something mean, or do something that's like, why did I do that? Why did I say that? But then we're recognizing, and it's this, I guess they call it samsaras. You could call it like the inertia of the habit of the ego that's still fleshing out. I mean, we're not, like super Christ beings that are completely sin free and egoless, because we have these realizations. And so this isn't making excuses to carry sin, because I feel the ego will want any reason to say, I am just human, and Christ died to carry the sins of me, and so therefore I will continue to judge my brother. I'll continue to abuse my body, my vessel. I'll continue to have these thoughts that are negative about myself, or treat others in a way that I wouldn't want to be treated. And it's okay, because I'm human and I'm allowed to sin. That doesn't sit right with me. Okay, now when we do sin, it's knowing that we don't need to carry the shame of the sin, and turn our face back to God and say, this is the truth of repentance. It's like, I truly feel I've disappointed you, creator, from the aspect of listening to that ego, or having that service to self override this desire to be of love and service. And when we feel it, it's like, oh, I disappointed myself. And when you're on the spiritual path, even these little white lies, or these little thoughts that come in that aren't in line with great divine truth, is like, oh, it's like, you want nothing to do with it. And it's not because I don't want to sin and I want to be a better person. It's like, it's just, you see through that ego, you see through that arrogant or pride, or low self-talk, or something that isn't in line with love. And it, like I said, it's on both sides. Whatever you're prone to, it could be negative self-speak, so negative, where it's like victimization, feeling bad for self, and this lower state, or this other state where we're just like proving to be something stronger, and here I am, and this chosen one, no, we're all divine beings. There is no chosen one. We all have purpose. We all have a divine essence being that needs to be shined through once the distorted veil is cracked open, and nobody can see through that veil of theirs, because it's so thick and layered upon layered. But the more enlightened, or higher states of conscious beings can see through the veils of other people once they've seen through their own, and say, I see your divine light, brother, sister. I see through your ego and your veil, and so I can rest with you there. I can connect with you there. I can express with you there. And so I don't need to react to your egos, or your position of threat, or your whatever it is, because I see myself there. I see you as my self at a point in time. And so we must undo the part of ourself that is still tied to that veil and that belief, so that we can understand our divine nature. Okay, now we must not do anything if we want to stay asleep in the matrix and stay in our ignorant self. And I talked about in my last video, wanting to remain in the ignorant self. And I said it in a way because the suffering, of going through that, dying onto self, is the process, such as, being crucified, because it really is the most challenging thing you could possibly think of going through, in your life. Now, I can only speak to my experience. I can't speak to Eckhart Tolle, where I wake up completely enlightened. and divine. Maybe this is like death by a million paper cuts, because it's like all of this like death, and I said this deep, profound like dying, and I think it came to me maybe because I talked about it. It was kind of coming through as like in the sacral body, that deep pain that I was feeling was remnants in my sacral, and the sacral representing like the emotions, and the watery side where I feel is lifetimes, eons, I don't know how many lifetimes of death, suffering, and pain that is still housed there. And I think that the only way for me to go through my specific journey was to go through these, like, it almost feels like burps, because it's like a pocket of like, oh, I'm like crying, I'm like on my knees, like feeling like this intense death of a child, my child in front of me, and it's over and over. And I think it's these pockets of lifetimes of experience this. And if I would have felt this all like once, because it's like, why is this taking so long? Why does this keep happening? It's like, I always feel after the burp, the burp of that experience, because this is a pocket of the energy that comes, and I feel it. And it's always the same feeling. Like I said, it's this deep loss. It's this thing I have no words for. Okay. Even experiencing in this 3D, like I said, death of another, and loss or heartbreak or whatever. This is so deep and profound, and it is felt on a soul crushing level, and then it is released, and after I feel lighter, I feel more connected. And like I said, then my consciousness felt a little more open to download, or to a spiritual concept, or a greater truth, or I saw my divine nature a little more, bit by bit by bit, and it sort of added on to it. And so I looked forward to, okay, like, what am I going to release now, so I can broaden my state of consciousness more and more and more. Although in that point in time, it's so intense, it's you're just like, you would choose anything other than that pain. It's like, not knowing that there would even be an end to that. Like, is there an end to this? If I've had like millions and millions of lifetimes, I don't know. I don't know if I've only had a few. I don't know if I've had millions. I don't know, but I know I've been an energy that has no end and no beginning from some point. And so there's many different sort of experiences this energy has had. And I feel like the sorrow and the experience that's trapped or maybe unhealed is like bubbling up and being released. And I did also talk about the collective sort of pains and sufferings. And because I am giving of service to others, of through collective consciousness, through these readings and healings, it's like I could tap into collective consciousness. And so I don't know if there's a lot of those burps, if you will, burps of healing through other people's suffering. Okay. And then, like, I did talk about also being very connected to my twin flame, and so I know he's going through his own suffering, and I feel these burps, if you will, of like a releasing of suffering, that does not feel like mine. And so I don't know where that sort of thing ends, but I do know after the experience, it sort of opens up to greater state of consciousness. And so I do feel it's coming from sacral, because it feels so emotional, but like I talked about, it sort of also morphed into this like feeling of awness. And I think the shift here is very slow, but it went from completely just feeling like separation, sadness, loss, grieving from the deepest profound way, slowly to this awe. And I think without the awe, without that devotion, I'd be in this non-duality void space where it's like, what's it for? What am I living for? I don't have any attachments or desire. And it feels so motivationalist. It feels so bland. It feels so misunderstood, disconnected, jaded, elated. Not even jaded so much, but it's like non-energy. I don't even know how to explain it, and that was probably the worst, feeling that state, and having that state of in between. Because especially if you're used to a certain identity, and I was a strong identity. I mean, we all have strong identities, but to me it was like what I was really attached to, like success and like vibrancy, like my wand suit. But the wand suit was through the egoic eyes. And so to be unplugged from the Matrix, it was like I just felt dead onto the world. Like I have served no purpose. I'm sort of taking up space. I'm just a multi-feed. And oh, what's this for? And you can only be in that state where you start having these dark thoughts like, I should just end it all, be one with the creator. Like if it's all non-duality, then it really doesn't matter if I'm alive or dead. It really doesn't matter what I do. And if I do this or do that, it has no impact at the end of the day. There's no right, there's no wrong. There's just like this being state, and it can very, very quickly spiral into dark depression, and that's why I don't feed too much into the non-duality as it sits, although there's lots of truth in that. Okay. But we do experience duality here in the 3D states, because with duality is where we see contrast, where we see dark and lights, the only way for us to really understand our divine nature. And so duality isn't a bad thing. Duality is really us being able to use the contrast and to see ourselves through this polarity, and when I say duality, like I'm talking about masculine, feminine, the positive and the negative energy, not good, bad, okay, just energy. But we are all one. And so this non-duality is seeing everything from sort of one state of consciousness. And so you could get really stuck there, and I feel like when we break through that ceiling of still moving beyond that ascension towards devotion, and that is what I truly feel, because I mean, the name of this podcast is A Heart's Way. Okay, now it's not the literal heart so much as it is the love. You could say it's through the heart chakra. I mean, it is through the heart chakra, but it's through this divine truth. Okay, divine truth, which divine nature and essence is love. Truth and love is synonymous with God. And so that is the truth in which you get your fire, and the fire is that desire, that healthy desire, not egoic desire, to be of service, to be devoted to God, to be devoted to brother and sister, to overcome the sin, okay, or the shadow or the darkness, and be like, I want to be of service. I want to be of light. I want to, and not from this place of I must do this or I'm not it. It's like I feel that I am it. And so how can I now express it? How can I express it? How can I express it? And you just get guided to your expression of it. It's like it's unique to you. And like I said, whether it's, and this is why I continue to do tarot, even though I do feel like there's a lot of like ascended spiritual people that might poo-poo tarot a lot. It's like, oh, it keeps people sort of in a lower state of consciousness, or like it's kind of like the religion of the tarot in some way. You're using me as sort of like this preacher person to like bridge this gap, and I feel like there's a place for everything. There's even a place for religion. If you're wanting to connect to the divine, there's a lot of truth in the Bible and all of these teachings, but and truth in meditation. But all of this stuff, like I said, is just a stepping stone and a tool, and all of it will get you to the same sort of place of inner standing, but is not needed. And especially in the case of religion, where it's creating a separation consciousness and a you versus me and a right versus wrong, then you've sort of leaned into the more negative polarity, okay, because things are either polarized towards love or polarized in the opposite direction. And so we have a conscious choice to choose. Are we polarized towards love and truth? Is this our path? And there is nothing wrong with being on any path, but maybe the suffering path is like the non-choosing, being in the middle and not knowing that there's a choice, and being so ignorant and being so in the motion. And ignorant doesn't mean stupid by any means. This ignorant self is the not knowing, the not knowing. And if we only knew, then we would be able to make a conscious choice to say, well, I still want to live in this way, or make these decisions in this way. But it's like the more truth you gain and clarity you gain, it's like you don't want to be misaligned with things that aren't in line with the great truth. And that is that of love, of being of service, of seeing self and other, and so yeah, I don't know what I'm going to call this video. I think it's just unpacking maybe the process a little bit better, that there is no like knowing everything spiritually, but there are certain understandings and inner experiences that you're going to have on your journey that are very specific to you, that maybe no one will understand, and if you're not understanding another concept that might seem very ascended or rich in spiritual truth, it's like it might not be something that is needed for your journey. Doesn't make it not, it's not a truth out there. It might even be understood by you at a certain point in your journey, but it's not. The more knowledge you attain, kind of like a doctor, if you don't know all of these things and you get a patient, it's like, I never learned about the heart, the ear, the brain, and so therefore it's like I'm sort of a useless doctor here. This isn't the same sort of thing. It's like your being is very specific to what the creator intends for you, and it comes with a certain expression. You're a wave in an ocean, and all of these waves create the ocean itself, and so your wave is specific to that. And so we don't want to resist what it is that you are, and we also do not want to have to become the ocean, because who could become this big ocean unless of course you're power hungry, or have this belief you must be the whole ocean. But that is not what it is. It's just being that wave, and allowing oneself to flow in relationship to the other waves that create this beautiful ocean of flow state. And things will just kind of come to you, like I said, like information, knowledge when you need it, teachers when you need it, messages when you need it, concepts of great spiritual truths that might have not have made full sense, experiential truths, rather than just these conceptual truths, will start to really sort of resonate and marinate within your being. And the more you sort of sit with that, the more you see. So do not feel you need to seek. Okay, if you are meditating, fine. If you're watching tarot, fine. We're all in different sort of ages and stages of this awakening process. None of it is bad. And I feel like the more sort of is released and seen through, the rest of what needs to come to you in way of truth comes as a natural flowing to you. There is no seeking. Okay, now I say comes to you, but it's already within you, because all you're doing, like I said, was braiding that connection to the divine. And so it's like from your DNA, from your light source to the divine source, is like there, it's always been connected, it's always been understood. And so is it coming in so much as it is coming out? I think it's one and the same, in and out. It's like one of the same. It's like, is the sun ray going outward really, or is it an extension of it that's just more of the sun that's pushed out, that's the same, made of the same material, or made of the same energy body, or made of the same photons, or made of the same construct? It really isn't how it's flowing in or coming to. It's kind of like a dance with the divine creator, but our job is to remove the particles and remove the walls and the obstructions from getting in the way of that sunlight flow. And we have the ability to do this. Okay, and this is through just awareness. That's all it is. We don't have to force it to go away. We don't have to resist certain truths. We don't have to deny or suppress identities. So if we created an identity, we're not saying I hate that identity, or I'm ashamed that I was this, or that I am that, or it's just acknowledging what it is that we've identified as, and who we've identified with, and the stories we believe to be true. And then butting up the question, is this the great truth? Is this truly who I am? Or is there something more? Am I something more? Am I something deeper than this? Is this really the truth? And really being very curious to really, really dive into truth, because only wanting to know truth is how you get there, and having the curiosity for this. And unless you're there, there's no one who's going to motivate you to do this. You could be in a state of floating, and I found the void, like it felt like a state of suffering. And so I was motivated to get out of the void, and although in my identity, I didn't feel I was suffering, in the egoic sort of pride, if you will, or attaining outcome, attachment to material things, to me was like, it's not creating, it wasn't creating like a suffering in the same state that the void was, because I felt like there was a fulfillment, but it was always an empty fulfillment. So in a state, it was like an underlying suffering, because I still connected to connect to my divine nature. So it always felt like I was working for someone else or doing something misaligned. It never felt like it was truly connecting to the truest part of my soul and my calling. And so that was a forever thing. Like even in school, I felt like this felt wrong, or like I wasn't being misguided, or like just get that out of the way so I could just do my thing, and then realizing I can never get to do my thing because I'm gonna be like poor on the street, or like I won't be able to survive here in the matrix. So I must become, I must, and it's like the survival, it was like survival mode. And so undoing this from the root chakra was like my biggest thing, like undoing my need for security and safety, and that I needed these things in order to say, okay, like I'm safe, and I can now become more true. And so it always felt like I was gonna get here. I always knew I was gonna get to some way of truth. I just didn't understand how it was all gonna unfold. But it is through the great suffering, whether it be the void, whether it be, you're on the opposite end of, like I said, the ego, where we're suffering from addiction or depression or like negative self-speak or an inability to feel at par or do the thing we think we should have within us and feel bad about. Like, you can only carry that for so long, before it's like, I want to know my true nature. I want to connect with the greatest truth. And it is liberating, because the truth is ultimately the thing that really sets you free. It's our divine nature, and really inner feeling it that allows us to feel free and feel whole, and see beyond everything that was false. Okay, but I don't feel for all of us it's a one and done. Those are very exceptional. I mean, if you have a one and done sort of experience like Eckhart Tolle, like I said, you wake up enlightened, like great, then that's their experience and their journey. But I feel for most of us, and it's not even this grand sort of process. Your kundalini awakening, like it's this grand production, or like this enlightenment process is like this big thing that's just like special and unique. No, it's very natural. It could be very ugly. It's very real. It's very natural. It feels very natural, although we do have spiritual experiences that seem almost supernatural, okay, and very mystical. And we need those in order to sort of wake us up. And like I talked about, for me, it was those numbers and the synchronicities, and it was really like things I could not explain, experiences I couldn't explain. And yeah, like everything that was unfolding was like, I can't explain this. I can't explain how I knew this, how I understood this, how this information's coming to me. There's no other answer other than there's something else beyond this form. And so it must be shown this way. But other than that, it's like, I'm just a being like you, and my purpose is unique with me, but I am not a chosen one or a special one. Just like I don't believe there are certain like chosens, although I do feel like there is a group that's pioneering this unfolding, because it must unfold. And so first souls of unfolding, might have a bigger challenge, because it's butting up against the paradigm of that of societal beliefs, and being called wacky or cuckoo, or like just you go live off grid, or you go create a tarot channel, or you go um do what it is that you're being called to do, and you're looked at sideways, or going against the grain, or going against religion, or you're just. Meanwhile, it's like, this is our divine nature and truth, and it's so aligned with feeling so right that it the judgments of others and the opinions of others just don't do anything to that great truth, because the truth stands on its own. Like I say, there is no threatening the truth, because the truth is the truth. There is no undoing truth. It is there, and it is once you connect to it, you just feel so safe. There is no what ifs or unwavering um in your belief, because it's not stemmed from belief. It's an inner knowing. It's an experience that is felt to the point where you then understand that it is true. And so it's no longer this belief that you're hanging on to, like believe in God or believe in Jesus or believe in this sort of way that is not about belief. Um, and so this is what I wanted to share with you guys. Let me know about your journey. And I do love you guys so much. Thank you for sharing with me. I hope this provided some insight. I am reading your comments. Let me know what you guys want to hear about. I could do shorter videos, regarding certain topics. Of course, I like to talk about ego, false self, and all those types of things. So if you're stuck somewhere in the ascension process or just want to talk about some of the experiences you had, if you want to come on this podcast, I will be arranging through Zoom or something like this where we can have a dialogue and just understand about like our real experiences that we're having that we could just unpack and dive in deeper, closer to greater truth. All right, beautiful angels. I'll see you at the next one. Bye-bye.